Uh, I am president of Collinwood for YouTube. That is my buddy Patrick McCray. That is my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to talk episode 240, chosen by yours truly, narrated by Alexander Bolke, written by Rod Sproat, directed by Leela Swift. This episode was recorded May 17th, 1967, broadcast May 26th, 1967. And this is the episode where David goes to the old house and he sees Maggie, but he thinks it's Josette because Maggie Evans is dressed like Josette. Barnabas has Maggie Evans kidnapped, obviously, and he's convincing her that she's Josette, and she's dressed like Josette, very lovely, I might add, in this episode. Catherine Lee Scott looks absolutely stunning in Josette's dress. There's a couple reasons I chose this episode. Number one, it's written by Ron Sproat. I was just trying to piss off Danny Horn. Number two.
Joel, are you trying to start like some kind of weird kind of Dark Shadows feud here?
You're trying to start a feud.
No.
I am becoming very uncomfortable with this episode choice because it just seems like, it is okay, Joel, that other people can dislike things that we like, and that people can like things that we dislike. It's called democracy.
The horn dog had very good observations on the resonance of the Manson family during the Petofi storyline, and that was a very positive influence. I can say this very, very, very definitively. I've not read a lot of Mr. Horn's stuff, but every time I have, there have been some very valuable insights about the show, and so the main reason that, this is something that's never come up, the main reason I really kind of avoided that is I didn't want to copy anything, accidentally. But you have to hand it to this guy for having done so much. And the daybook and because nobody's gonna, it's like nobody wants to talk about it. But the thing I also appreciate about what I've read of what Danny Horn does is he really explores a lot of these episodes in very minute detail. I look at it, I think, my God, this guy must type fast, or is devoting a lot of time to these. And by the last day books that I wrote, and I'll write more, but the last day books I wrote, they were taking me 3 or 4 hours. And that's still, the amount of it was different. But, I think I was writing more kind of topical essays that were inspired by the episodes. And according to Winry, had a lot more autobiographical stuff than I knew at the time I was aware of. So, different focuses and so on. But, there's some good analysis. Now, we have kind of been talking about the Ron Sproat thing because allegedly that's not a part of the show that is as resonant with him. No, seriously. Then right. I've heard that he is not his favorite writer, and he's not obligated to like everything in Dark Shadows. Mm-hmm. But it has made me kind of focus on Ron Sproat a little bit because I like Ron Sproat. Now, I haven't read his, the detail. I'm looking like Oliver Queen lately. Old Oliver Queen. Her very old queen, one or the other. I haven't really read what his cavils are with Ron Sproat, but I think Ron Sproat's a good writer. So yeah. There, it's finally one of us is talking about the other in a positive way. Not that he's ever saying anything about in a negative way.
Yeah, and also Joel, just to be like the I hate to be that guy, but you're wrong. Catherine Lee Scott does not play Josette. It's an actress named Dory Kavanaugh who went uncredited. Had you done 10 seconds in looking at the Dark Shadows wiki, you would have found that out. But back to the whole Ron Sproat thing. This is basically a loop episode of Dark Shadows where you start with a situation and you end with the same situation, and not much happens in between because there's no real movement of the plot necessarily. There's no real. It's more of like an info dump, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I will give one example of a scene that is not only well written, but I think is a lot. I think it plays a lot. The actors really bring out the best in it, and it's a scene where Barnabas and Roger are in the foyer. They're in the big living room, and Roger's talking about how and it's in it. Roger says, it's coincidental that Maggie Evans has disappeared, but that Josette is being seen, and they're unrelated, but they're kind of related. And if you notice how they're acting, Edmonds as Roger is playing it as super casual, but there's a gentility, but that he suspects something's up. He just can't put words to it. And Barnabas is playing throughout this episode, all his dialogue when he's talking to David, and here everything he says sounds like an order. Everything he says sounds like he's telling someone what to do until the very end of the scene. And I'm blanking on what Roger says, but you could see Frid's face kind of go like, okay, he just called out and not know why. But
now, wait, who's giving whom the order? Is it the Barnabas's issue?
Barnabas is giving his dialogue sounds very forceful. It sounds like he is giving an order, even as he's saying things like, we all know that we don't go into look in people's windows, don't we? And David said, yeah. So when you hear that, it's not a barn burner of an episode. It's not like it's not Sam Hall and Gordon Russell's get to the thing. I think Ron Sproat is at this point, he's a master of the slow burn, especially this early Barnabas one where nothing is beat, beat, beat. And you could tell he's thinking about, okay, I know what vampire stories are like. How do I do something that's going to engage the audience that doesn't trigger those cliches?
And related to that, talking about the slow burn, I really think that is the tougher thing to write than the constantly cutting to the chase. Because as I've often said, Dark Shadows is like a week of Dark Shadows is about a half a day's worth of programming just stretched out. And with this, what I'm constantly amazed by with Dark Shadows is that I'll watch a scene and it'll be good. It'll be, what does that mean? But it'll be well written. It'll be compelling. I feel like I'm learning something about the characters. I feel like the plot's moving ahead. But then when it's over, I can't quite remember what they were talking about, or if you ask me, well, how is the plot moved ahead? I can't really account for it.
Yeah, that's why I see it as a loop episode, because, and especially in this early Barnabas sequence, you don't want to give up everything too soon, but you need to know how to keep the audience's attention. And I think this episode, the main point, there are two big points. One is that David knows Josette is, David knows somebody, Josette is at the old house. And the other is, I think it's, get rid of the Roger Vicky scene, which is kind of your kind of sop to, it's kind of your obligatory soap opera scene. That scene with Roger and Barnabas, it kind of connotes that, okay, I don't think he's openly suspicious. I think it's more of okay, something's not, these things seem to fit, and I don't know why they fit, but they do. And Barnabas is like realizing, okay, that another chink of his armor has kind of burst. It's kind of buckled. I mean,
Yeah.
that scene I think could have been. I'm surprised Louis Edmonds didn't use it as a screen test to play Lieutenant Columbo, because it's a perfect Levinson and Link moment. And kids, look that up. Levinson and Link, Columbo. You'll thank me later.
To geek out a little bit, there's another aspect of Barnabas kind of giving the orders and these very suggestive things that you say, is that there is a power that is ascribed to vampire characters often that Barnabas doesn't really seem to have, and that's glamour.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to you did not remember any of that. Barnabas doesn't do much of that, because that's deadly on a soap opera. Because it just gives him this rewind and record over power that it's too powerful. It's too much. And I think one of the fascinating things about Barnabas, and this has nothing to do with what you're talking about, something so literary, and now I'm just into the world of Marvel comics and stuff. Sorry, but is the many limitations of Barnabas's powers. I think it's interesting, because if he could glamour, David or Roger, this episode would be over in 10 minutes. But he can't. And then I don't know if I should get into this. Let's bookmark this for maybe later in the discussion, because I have a whole thing about, does Barnabas need to drink blood? And that has really nothing to do with the main plot of this one. So, Jewel, what's your thought on all this? You're smoldering with intent.
Well, the second reason I picked this episode is because we get a lot of great even more character sort of further along with Vicky's job as governess here too, between her, Roger. Keep in mind, David keeps going to the old house. This is not his first interaction with Barnabas, and that's another reason I picked this episode. This is not his first interaction, I love this interaction most, because, and the reason I love it is because if you didn't know Barnabas had a younger sibling, this would be that episode you could sort of see when Barnabas is talking to David up in Josette's room. You could sort of see, okay, you could tell this is not Barnabas's first rodeo in talking to somebody who's a lot younger than him. This is not Barnabas's first rodeo in talking to a child, especially. And that's one thing I took away from this episode most, too. That, and when we see the newspaper clipping of Catherine Scott's photo, Maggie Evans, and he says, missing girl, and Roger's the one reading it. And here's Roger, who's still mad at Sam for revealing the whole, the manslaughter trial incident thing, where it was Roger who hit the guy who was walking up with his hill, not Burke. He's still mad at Sam for that, because Sam was the one who witnessed all that. And so he says, I almost feel sorry for old Sam Evans. But what I love most, though, too, is what you get from Vicky is a woman, and we've seen her be vulnerable before, but she's even more vulnerable now, because with Maggie going missing, with Catherine Lee Scott's character going missing, though we know where she is, you get a sense of, okay, if Maggie went missing, who's next? And you get that from Vicky most, because, hey, I'm a woman. If my best friend got kidnapped, if somebody who I considered my best friend was kidnapped, how do I know I'm not next? How do I know Carolyn's not next?
Sure.
She does.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that psychology that the writer lays in this episode. He does a really good job. Ron Sproat does a really good job of laying that psychology, with Alexandra saying those lines of, she says, it takes everything I have not to lose my temper with David because of Maggie going missing. Yeah. And she's referring to the point of, hey, my friend's missing, who's next? And when you get something like that, it brings, to me, when you get into the terror isn't Barnabas biting somebody. The terror is you never know what Barnabas is going to do next. And they build that right back up in this episode, even though we know what's going to happen because we've seen these episodes before. But to play sort of fun pretend and not know is just that much more fun. And that's the reason I picked this episode.
Yes. Back to something several minutes ago about Vicky's concern over the kidnapping stuff, beyond just not wanting to be kidnapped, is this, when you mention Sam Evans and Maggie and Sam's concerned about Maggie and all of that. Not only is Vicky thinking of herself as a kidnapping victim, but I think it kind of underlines the fact that she is really alone. There is no Sam Evans for her. She is ultimately an employee. That neither Roger nor Elizabeth, I think, are showing a hell of a lot of cognizance on Vicky's danger and Vicky's concerns. That okay, Vicky, we're gonna hire security guard for a little while, or get Sheriff Patterson to send another guy to kind of just sit his patrol car out in front of the house, or thing, which they could easily do, and I think the fact that they're not doing that, and this has already happened, probably increases feelings of disposability for her. And that of the women on the show, she is the most vulnerable. This really brings back the orphan concerns, because at least in New York, the foundling home would have kind of been concerned if there had been a series of serial kidnappings in that area of Manhattan. Maybe. I hear a delivery guy. Gordon, carry on. Keep Jewel in line. I'll be back right after this.
Okay. Well, Joel, yeah, I think what Vicky expresses is not only a legitimate concern, but also she kind of stands up to Roger, because he's kind of pushing her to be like, you need to keep an eye on David. Well, okay, yeah, I'll go see him. No, I'll come with you. No, I got this. Because at one point, even Roger kind of says, yeah, we're both gonna, yeah, we both know he's going to be at the old house. Yeah, he's going to be at the old house. And I think too, I think this is why Sproat is such a really good writer. I mean, that kind of moment could have easily been played, knowing what soap operas were back then. Just like Roger tells Vicky to go check on David. They have a little fight. Roger says, you know what, go do it or you're fired. It would have been that simple. And I think adding that, it also shows how much Roger has grown, because technically this is just, not too long ago was the whole Phoenix saga. So you see Roger at least trying to be a better dad, whereas before, pre-210, he and David were existential garbage fires and really just not really good people. So you see at least he's trying to be a dad, which and I think that this episode, there's some good character beats. I don't know if I would say it's got the most compelling plot, because you're not really seeing anything happen. Like you're not seeing, it's not like someone comes in, oh wait, that's Maggie Evans. But I think it shows kind of if you think of, like, to use a metaphor, if you watch an old timey movie, there's like a watch dial. Like usually there's a bomb with an alarm clock, and you see the second hand kind of move, so you know that once it hits 0, it's going to explode. This episode, that timer just went up a notch. It went up 1 second. It moved further. And it's very easy to, especially at this point, because it's very easy to kind of lump that with the Like if the first 210 episodes were those pre-Barnabas episodes were the writers trying to figure out, okay, how do we engage the audience most effectively? This is how do we keep them engaged? And I think all of this is through very deliberate laying of subtle clues, very deliberate. It's very deliberate and very thought out. There's nothing like for the first few weeks of the storyline, they didn't even use the word vampire.
Yeah.
It was just like something's draining blood, something's attacking cows.
Yeah.
Although to Patrick's question, I wish he were here. I'd like to think that like maybe the reason why we don't see him drink blood on screen is that he's off like molesting cows and doing rude things to chickens and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think he is in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think they do. The writers, producers do a really good job with Barnabas, and because there's a earlier episode, and it's the same episode where John Carlin's Willie Loomis comes into the Blue Veil, where Burke and Joe and Maggie are sitting at the table, and Joe had come in, and he just looked like the color was drained from his face.
I remember this. He's talking about the cows.
Yeah, and this is where the writers are sort of laying that groundwork of this is how we're going to get away with Barnabas drinking blood. It's not something we have to show. It's just something we have to suggest. And suggestion in a story is one of the biggest things you could do if you can't get away with showing it, especially in the 60s and stuff, because censorship was a bitch. But
well, it was a different time and a different set of standards, especially for daytime TV. I mean, you had later on, there's a show called The Doctors that started dealing with some of these issues. You had One Life to Live, which was which hired two writers straight from Dark Shadows, Sam Hall and Gordon Russell, that dealt with it from, rich family, poor family. I mean, it wasn't until the late 60s that you started seeing some of these more, I don't want to say progressive, but you saw them opening up the storylines because that's where the culture was heading, and that's where that's where primetime TV was heading. So to kind of to fault Dark Shadows at this point for not showing everything. And even Dan Curtis has said this was not a horror show; it's a gothic romance. So you need a little restraint. I mean, what do you expect from Dark Shadows? Halloween ends, Jewel? Like seriously, no.
I don't expect that at all from Dark Shadows. What I'm saying is, look, I appreciate what they're doing here with the mentioning of the cow being abducted, and the blood is completely drained. And as Burke says, well, if you take a cow, you know what you're going to do with it, which he's right. When you're doing that little plot point there, you're doing your due diligence as a writer and director and a producer, saying, okay, we can't show this, but you know what? This is how we're going to get away with it. Anytime Barnabas has to drink blood, we can always fall back on this, or just have him look, when he looks at Willie and says, go, we know what he's meaning.
It's like Jack and the Beanstalk in reverse. Yeah. He has to come back with the cow.
Yeah, it's really, really good that they do this. I love that they do this. Keep in mind, I'm not suggesting you should show bloodletting at all. I'm merely saying that it's really good that they do this. And with this episode here that we're talking about, 240, no, there's no blood. There's no mention of it. You don't. With a vampire story, even in today, I don't feel you need a ton of blood necessarily. But you do need what you need most, other than the gothic sort of setting that you get. What you need most is you need the suggestion of, okay,
Jewel, I hate to interrupt, but I think you just put Patrick to sleep.
I had things to say multiple times. So I'm just wake me up.
All right, go ahead.
I'm enjoying it, Joel. I'll watch it tomorrow. What you
oh my god, what you really need.
Yeah,
so it's one of my useless insights.
Joel, when you have two guests on, it's usually important to let them speak as much as you do.
Look at the screen occasionally.
Yeah, because I could see Patrick doing that, but
Go
no,
ahead.
I do
Go ahead.
Patrick. I want to
ahead.
publicly apologize for not stepping in earlier.
You're fine. I caught a few winks. I just didn't have my CPAP, and I almost died. Joe, you
Go ahead.
almost killed me.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
You almost killed me without my CPAP.
yeah. Thanks,
No,
Joel.
I'm just kidding. Jewel, we're just funning you. Um, uh, no, I just gonna interject a bon mot that's lost all of its effervescence at this point. But what if, when the cow is being attacked and all of that, we also found out one of the cows was missing, and it was Barnabas's first attempt to create Josette. And Willie is completely confused by this cow in Josette's bedroom. And Barnabas is laying out the hairbrush and all of the other things. And we must have Josette's special meal. And the cow is just completely confused. And then the cow defies him. So he puts the cow in the basement in a black frock. And Willie's the one who says, I think between the cow and Maggie, I think Maggie may favor Josette a little more. It's the inner Josette. Is what I will see later in Vicky. That he talked. I think it'd be funny.
Well, it could be worse. It could have been a sheep.
But we've said again and again that there is no, physical danger of something untoward
Right.
happening, and I think the sheep would be similarly safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
not how Barnabas rolls. Now, this isn't a Quentin. Quentin, God only knows.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be a safe anything in Collinsburg. But back to that. So if you really notice, if you look at Barnabas's overall arc when he's a vampire, he spends a lot of time not drinking blood. He's a vampire for all of 1897. We only hear about the occasional attack. It's not that much. The whole Ragnarok sequence. Barnabas is a vampire during that, isn't he? He's a vampire when they get back from 1995 still. And I really don't hear, there's the suspicion that he's the one attacking Maggie. It was one of the funniest episodes where Julia comes and says, I know it was you, Barnabas. And he's there with his voice like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, you can't lie to me. You remember that? And so I've thought a lot about this. One of my thoughts is that I like to liken Barnabas to Ralph Hinckley in Greatest American Hero. Because of the hairdo, but also because they gain these superpowers and they have no guide. Barnabas is one of the only non-dynastic vampires in literature. And I like to imagine Barnabas being inserted into the world of True Blood or the Camarilla or something like that. And they try to pull all of their, you can't attack a superior vampires, someone higher up in the lineage. And Barnabas just a witch curse. It doesn't work, guys. I can attack anybody I want. But it especially in 1897, it made me think about, well, what is the role of blood? Is it that Barnabas just thinks he needs it? Does Barnabas just need a little of it? Or, and this is the fun Marvel Comics sort of approach, does Barnabas get more powerful when he drinks blood? So when he has to power up, like early on into this, into his time in 1967, he's drinking a lot of blood because he's having to deceive people and, turn into a bat every 10 minutes and, maintain control over Willie and all this other stuff. He's, and maybe there's a sequence like in 1897 when he's dematerializing and doing all of that. Well, why isn't he doing that elsewhere? Well, it's because he hasn't been drinking enough blood to give him, the energy to do that. So I know that's, a very, Second Life Bloodlines sort of approach to Dark Shadows and so on. But I think it's kind of interesting. It's just it's my comic bookish observation of the night.
Gordon, is there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, Jewel. No, I feel like. Are you okay?
No, God.
You're not okay. You just said no.
Really? What's happening, Joel? What's wrong?
I'm wearing pants. Just close your eyes, Jewel. They're made of lycra, and they cling to me in oh so many ways.
God help me.
It's all good.
No, what I was trying to say was, you could do a vampire story today without a lot of blood, as long as you have the suggestion that that is going on. And that's the thing with Dark Shadows does great is because we don't see Barnabas drinking blood doesn't mean he hasn't or hasn't that day. We don't know, and we don't have to know either. It's theater of the mind is the damnedest thing, and
He's
it's
got a wine cellar full of orphans. He's popping a fresh one.
No, he breaks into the local Red Cross after every blood drive and just binge drinks.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. There's a
garden hose running from there to his house.
On an episode of Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, there was a true story where somebody was breaking into a hospital, stealing the blood and drinking them. So I mean, look, could that happen? Sure, with Barnabas. But
is this the episode of Beyond Belief where Jonathan Frakes asks the questions?
Yeah.
I love that one. Yeah. He does that in every episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's one of the best things that they do on Dark Shadows is we don't see Barnabas always drinking blood, but the suggestion of it is always present in there, especially in these early Barnabas episodes. Later, we're going to see him bite prostitutes' necks, and it's going to be fun.
And also, don't forget, he's probably taking little nips from Maggie Evans just to keep her, off center.
Well, here's the first.
I heard something really interesting there.
Who's the first person Barnabas bites when he gets out of his coffin? Willie. I mean, Willie's the one that opens the coffin. So he's the first person to get bit and to have his blood drained a bit to get that sort of nourishment out of him.
So he goes from biting Willie to Maggie Evans' little nips. Continue.
Well,
I'm very uncomfortable with all of this.
He goes from biting Willie to biting the local cattle, biting local cows. A calf goes missing. So,
if you've been munching on Willie, you might as well bite a cow.
It's one of the best jokes my buddy John Philip Betancourt said when he was doing his Return to Dark Shadows blog. He said, "Hey, if your local cattle go missing, Barnabas may have woken up," which I thought was funny.
I've never read anything yet by Mr. Betancourt, but I'd like to. Which does he do best, benighting or beguiling?
Both. It's a really good story.
So it's 50-50.
It's a really good story. Now, he's on book 5, so if you want to go back to the beginning of it. But really, really good. With this episode, what's you guys' favorite scene?
I like the Barnabas David scene. Those are just always really interesting because David's really not in any danger ultimately. And once you kind of have watched the show before, that despite his strategic moves to protect himself, Barnabas's larger goal, his larger motivation is that despite his own private needs, he is dedicated to the Collins family continuing. I think there are probably moments early on where he's thinking, I don't know if it has to continue like this. And, he really has to scare the hell out of David a few times. And maybe he's even thinking, okay, well, this time it's it. But I think when David, survives, he's sort of like, okay, it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
The chances of Roger fathering one child are kind of slim. And it's a good thing, Burke was there to oversee. But, a second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene is the Barnabas and Roger one, and something to consider since we're talking all about Marvel comics and stuff. Marvel Comics actually had a character named Bessie the Hell Cow, who was a cow
That's
that
right.
was strained by Dracula enough to be turned into a vampire.
It's
Go look
true.
that up, Joel. You'll thank me later.
Did Bessie the Hell Cow and Dr. Bong ever interact?
I don't know. They probably did.
I got a Steve Gerber story at some point if you want it.
Mhm.
It's a treat.
My favorite scene in this is obviously I love how they shoot the window scene with David looking in the window of the old house. It's so cool. It's just such a well lit scene on the inside. And you see Josette's dress. It's beautiful.
They did handle black and white really well.
Yeah, it's
They
creepy
used
and beautiful.
they used black and white really well, and for an effect like that, right on the nose.
Yeah.
It's I kind of wonder what the tone in the writing of the show would have been if, for whatever reason, budget or whatever, they had remained in black and white. If the stories maybe would have been a little different. I mean, it's pure speculative nonsense, but it's interesting speculative nonsense.
You want to hear something weird? When
Yes.
I was watching the episodes of Zorro on Amazon, the new Zorro series, there were certain scenes that were sort of done in black and white. Not a whole episode, mind you, but there were like certain scenes done in black and white.
I think those might have been flashbacks because they did the Guy Williams Zorro in black and white for a few. I mean, that ran for years. I think off and on Disney would go back. Didn't they revisit that?
Yeah, Disney did do a Zorro series, but this new series on Amazon is Spanish.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So it's
you say Zorro, I think Guy Williams.
Yeah, this one's actually I think filmed in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. But
does it have a theme song? Do they of
Yes.
the night when the full moon
Well,
is bright?
It has a theme song, and it's really, really good. Watch the intro.
Is this Peter Dinklage Zorro? Because that I want to see.
Go watch this because I've watched 10 episodes of this. It's really good so far.
Hey,
Now
Amazon Prime is a new Zorro.
Yeah.
Neat. I love Zorro.
It's really cool.
So much that I have no idea of this new thing.
I think you guys will dig it.
Wow, what would a Zorro Quentin Collins crossover be like?
Lots of alcohol.
I used to imagine, lots of alcohol, certainly still do, but like just adventures of Quentin elsewhere, Quentin in the Old West, more Western cut of the Inverness and stuff like that. Wouldn't you love that? Because I'll tell you what better character to have Quentin run into after dealing with Count Petofi than Miguelito Loveless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Or Miguelito Loveless showing up looking for the hand of Count Petofi. Oh my God.
When you go to watch this new Zorro series, make sure you turn on your subtitles because they're spoken in Chinese and Spanish.
Okay.
So
okay.
I had to advise that to somebody else on Facebook. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out the new Zorro series, it's worth it. I enjoy the hell out of it so far.
How many episodes are there? How many seasons?
So far, there are 10.
Okay, so that sounds like it's basically one season.
Yeah, for now. It is.
Okay.
It's on its first season, so.
Gordon, did you read the Isabella Allende Zorro novel? Didn't she write a... That's who it was.
I know she did, but I know she wrote one. I've never read it.
She's such a, serious and prestigious author. I can't imagine it's much fun. But, I could be wrong.
I still have yet to read the original Johnston McCulley Curse of Capistrano.
What is that? Is that what Zorro
That's the
is
first
based on?
official Zorro novel.
Neat.
It's the pulp story that led to, and it's been published under the name of the Mark of Zorros as a book. So I still have yet to read that. And it's in the public domain, so you can find a free copy on Gutenberg. You might be able to download it via Amazon for free.
Was there ever I know this is a complete tangent, but it fascinates me. Was there ever a crossover of Zorro and the Lone Ranger?
Nope, not to my knowledge.
I would like that.
So. they do a lot of fun things in this series that are really cool. I think, like I said, I think you guys will enjoy it. Is there anything you guys want to add about episode 240?
Zorro alone right now. It's great. It's a pip.
Yeah, I think Zorro would have been a great addition to this episode. How they would have fit him in, I don't know. But
man, Zorro will be a great addition to any episode. Let's see him deal with the pen. Maybe the sword is going to be mightier this time.
Mm-hmm. But the pen is easier to write with.
It's true, except for Z's. His penmanship with Z's was exquisite.
Guys, links to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook about is going to be in the description box.
Out of the night.
Link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box.
Come some trousers made of lycra.
Guys, I'll be seeing you. Take care.
In all the old familiar places.
Mm-hmm.